trying to get into through Facebook. There we go. All right, so we are recording and we're live on Facebook. I believe we're all good. So again, everybody, welcome to our Tuesday Talks with NAMI Greater Houston. This week is especially special for me because I get to talk to one of my friends and mentors, Dr. Aneika Simmons. She has helped me a long way in helping me figure out what I want to do, what I'm good at, and a way to express that to others. So she's really good at what she does, and I'm excited for you guys to talk to her, hear a little bit more about who she is, what she does, and how it intersects with mental health and with NAMI Greater Houston. And I'll admit, this is the most nervous I've ever been with one of these Tuesday Talk sessions because it's personal. So welcome, Dr. Simmons. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. I'm excited about our conversation.
Awesome. So as always, this is going to be a real laid-back conversation. Dr. Simmons and I are going to be talking this week about burnout and how it affects your mental health, how it affects your physical health, what it looks like, what we can do to prevent it, what we can do to treat it once we've already learned that we're living with that. And we're just going to kind of have a conversation. So if you do have questions, we ask that you please submit them either in the Facebook chat, or if you're joining us in the conversation through Zoom, you're welcome to submit them in the chat there. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. So let's get started. I'm excited. So, Dr. Simmons.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you do have a PhD in business, specifically in organizational behavior and human resources. So tell me a little bit about what that is, what that means, and how you got there, and a little bit about what you do.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you all for having me on today. I'm really excited about it. This is just such an important conversation to have, especially during these challenging times that we all live in. I can say that for me, I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin. I'm a Longhorn. And basically, I jumped into the consulting world. So I jumped into Accenture and working at Capgemini Ernst & Young at Fortune 500 companies and traveling and doing all that. And on one side, it seems glamorous. But as time went on, I basically realized that I couldn't really get my roots to the ground anywhere because no matter where I was always leaving to go somewhere else. And so basically, I decided that I needed to make a life change. And I decided to apply to several PhD programs. And just so everyone knows, the first time around, I applied to like 5 different schools and I got rejected from all of them. So I'm a person that believes in never giving up. And so I tried again the next year. I had to put everything on pause and try again. The next year I was accepted to Texas A&M University. And basically I decided I wanted to study people in an organizational setting. I love people. I love to learn. And it just was a really good fit for me. So that's how I got to academia, and really being an academic is an expression of who I am. So it's a really good fit for the gifts that I've been given.
Very well said. And it definitely fits in what I know about you, my experiences with you. So what made you interested in organizational behavior, specifically burnout? Like, I can kind of get how you ended up in that field, but I know that you talk a lot specifically about burnout.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, I got my PhD in around 2006. And about that time, I started having children. I have 3 children. I've been married for about 18 years and, just juggling everything, as moms, as women, we try to, give our all to everyone. And a lot of times we come up empty, like there's just nothing left to give. And so one morning I was talking with my husband and I just said, I'm completely spent. And I would like to better understand this so I can help myself and also maybe be a resource to the people I love and to people that are in my life. So basically, we just started to drill down on it, and we saw that Burnout wasn't just present in academia. It wasn't just present in technology. My husband is a technologist, but that is an issue that is common to man. So many people deal with burnout, and it's something that, in our opinion, should be discussed more. And that's why I'm here today.
Awesome. So how does mental health cross over into what you do?
Yeah, so basically, Anwan and I, that's my husband, we did a talk in New York at this Lead Dev conference, and that was in April. And that was right after we started to dig into this. And you all, in May 2019, the World Health Organization reclassified burnout as a legitimate diagnosis. So it wasn't till like last year that it became a legitimate diagnosis. And basically, how does it fit? Well, I teach org behavior, and we have a chapter on stress. And when this type of work began, when you study organizational behavior, stress was not something that people really thought, well, people go to work, they turn in these assignments, these to-do lists, they do all these different things, but really understanding the toll that it took on people had not necessarily been investigated. So it's a newer part of the literature. Like an older part is like justice or something like that. So how it crosses into my wheelhouse is that it's about stress. And stress, there's good types of stress. So there's eustress, EUSTRESS, and that's the type of stress that challenges you and you can grow from that. And then there's distress, and that's the type of stress that can kind of pull you down and weigh on you. And then if we stay in a stressed position for too long, then, and other factors take place, then ultimately we might come to a place of burnout.
So now you're talking my language. When you start talking about stress and anxiety, those are definitely buzzwords that we're familiar with at NAMI regarding mental health and mental illness. If nothing else, those are triggers to larger illnesses, larger episodes. So I can definitely see how those tie in together.
Absolutely.
So let's talk more about burnout. What exactly is burnout, and what does it look like in the average person?
Yes, well, thank you so much for asking that question, because burnout and stress are not the same thing, but burnout can be an outcome of, like I said, chronic stress. So burnout, the definition is basically the ongoing feeling that today's resources aren't enough to meet tomorrow's demands. And there's actually 3 components to it. The first component is emotional exhaustion. So if I feel completely exhausted, even when I wake up in the morning and I feel like I've just rested all night long, but I am exhausted. This is just a lack of energy, a sense that your emotional resources are being fully consumed by work or life itself. Well, that's one component. A second component to burnout is basically depersonalization. So this is a feeling where I'm getting to the point where I'm cynical, or I'm impersonal with how I respond to people. And one of the ways I like to, or we like to discuss this, and this has happened to me, where I went to a doctor's appointment and I heard the nurse like refer to me, oh, that's the stomach ache in room 3. And I was like, wow, like I wasn't a person anymore. I had been depersonalized, and not anything against her, but this person may have been dealing with burnout to where she didn't even have the reserve to deal with me on a personal level. And then the third component to burnout is basically reduced personal accomplishment. And this is marked by a tendency to reevaluate yourself negatively. And basically you begin to be overly critical of yourself, your work, and you kind of delve into self-criticism. So this is an academic view of it, but these are the 3 components: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment. These are the components of burnout.
You know, it's interesting to hear you say these things because, again, they cross over in so many ways to what we do here at NAMI. The symptoms that you speak of are also symptoms of anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses. I would love to sit and listen to a conversation with you and my executive director. You 2 academics going at it. I think it would be quite the conversation to hear the comparisons between the two situations. I love that you're able to break down burnout into these components, into exactly what it is, because especially like you said, stress is not burnout, but so many people want to lump things into stress or into depression. And even though burnout can cause stress or stress can cause burnout, they're not the same thing. And I think that there's so often similar issues with mental health, with mental illness. Especially, you talked about that dehumanization. We hear so many stories about people who feel like because of their mental illnesses, they're stigmatized and they're dehumanized, and it prevents people from getting help. So it's important that even as we are living through these situations, that we try to stay aware of one another in our situations. Because like you said, you don't know what that woman's been through, and she doesn't know what you're going through, right? But your responses to each other can have lasting effects on those situations. Wow. So we are talking a little bit about the crossover. Are there any statistics regarding burnout and mental health or mental illness?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's all types of statistics out there. Let me see here. So we looked at a Gallup poll when we were first starting to put this together, and it talks about how organizational burnout is becoming, so much more prevalent. And a recent study found that they studied like almost 8,000 full-time employees, and they found that 23% of employees reported feeling burned out at work very often or always, while an additional 44% represented feeling burned out sometimes. And this was before COVID-19. So we can only imagine the level of burnout that people are feeling now. And if we think about like precursors, like we think about moms and mothers and people that are at home, even dads that are at home, they talk about how, married American mothers spend almost twice as much time on housework and childcare than do married fathers. And although American mothers, including those with young children, are far more likely to be working now than the past decade, they spend more time on childcare today than moms did in the 1960s. So we just live in a world where we're perfectionists a lot of times. A lot of times people really struggle. I consider myself a recovering perfectionist. And so the statistics there just basically show that people want to do more with less time. And I'm not sure if our bodies are designed to handle that level of stress.
That's a good point. So I have some more questions, but let's take a question from Facebook. How do you know if it's depression or burnout, or do they go hand in hand? Especially since there's a component of reduced self-worth and accomplishment. Depression and burnout could easily be confused.
So again, I'm an academic, so I'm not a therapist or a psychologist, but I would say that burnout, and specifically, burnout is something where the research shows that you could actually be engaged and still be burned out. The highly engaged person, because a lot of people think, well, no, it's the people that are eyeing the door that are burned out. Well, that's not always the case. So, Jessica, you would have to tell me, like, when you think of depression, how would you define it? And that way, maybe we can tease out the difference between the two.
So I'm pretty new to NAMI, and I'm still learning exactly what the clinical definitions are. But my understanding is that depression is it's a mental and chemical response that creates, the same symptoms or similar symptoms that you mentioned in burnout. So that fatigue, that hopelessness, that isolation, exhaustion, things like that aren't burnout, but like I said, I guess I could see how they're confused. The difference, I would say, actually, as I'm talking it out, is depression is probably more of an internal trigger. It's external symptoms, but it's an internal trigger, whereas burnout is most likely created by external stimuli. Is that what you would?
Well, yeah, and I agree with what you were saying, and just from our conversation, in my mind, and again, this, I'm an academic in business, but I would say that burnout would be a precursor to depression in my mind.
Okay. And if there's anybody in the Zoom meeting or on Facebook who wants to clarify and offer a more clinical definition, we are open to the conversation.
Absolutely.
We are aware of our limitations.
Yeah, and that's okay.
And that's okay. So, okay, you opened up a whole lot in your last statement. You talked about pre-pandemic versus current pandemic, which I really want to delve into, is how the pandemic, how the economy, how all of the social unrest is affecting burnout and what people are doing about it. But also I want to talk about you personally. Like you mentioned so many of the things that as a people we're dealing with regarding burnout, but then you also referenced yourself. You're a mother, right? You're a businesswoman. You're a woman, right? You're a business person and then you're a woman, which in itself carries so much extra weight. Mm-hmm. So how are you personally affected by burnout? I know you mentioned you're a perfectionist.
Yes. And I continue to try to overcome that. But what I can tell you, so today is the first day of school, for example. So I want to make things, we worked really hard to set things up for our kids with their ring lights and their laptops and, snacks and everything. And they're at home, they're doing virtual learning. They miss their friends. So there's an emotional component. There's a physical component of it too, that we're trying to set things up for them in ways that work. And I'm empathetic to my children, and it hurts me when they hurt. So, dealing with that over a period of time has been stressful. Them knowing that this day was coming where they could see their friends virtually, but not be there with them. So it's definitely something that I am dealing with as well. But in terms of stress and burnout during the pandemic, I looked it up before our talk, and it just talked about how it is really increasing. And there's really three things that people are dealing with right now: the pandemic, the economy, and the social injustice. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the summer when I was trying to, keep my children from the television so they wouldn't see somebody, basically being suffocated on national television. So we are dealing with so much right now that it's just really important to have these healthy conversations so that we don't keep it within, but that we can talk things out and try to work through it.
I love it. And I can 100% relate. I'm going through similar now. My daughter's in the background trying to get my attention. Mom. So exactly. We have to juggle so many things, right? With so many situations.
I can't get in because the internet keeps going in and out.
Please start your computer. I'm so sorry. She's literally panicked because she's missing her class, and I guess the internet was cycling. So she let me know that was a priority, and I had to stop what I was doing.
Yes, absolutely. Understood.
So I can completely relate to what you're saying and how those situations can lead to various types of burnout. I want to backtrack a little bit.
We have another question from Facebook, and Jessica, if you want to help Madison while I get Dr. Aneika's attention on this, that's okay. So one of our Facebook watchers have asked, how should employees advocate for themselves in the workplace when they begin to feel burnout? So this is a problem that all of us are facing, as Jessica said, especially during the pandemic. What is, in your experience, the best way to have this addressed at our workplace, and how can we advocate it for ourselves?
Okay, so the first thing another construct in academia that we talk about is psychological safety. So you want to, dig your well before you need it. So you want to make sure that at the organizations that you work at, you build that relationship, you build that coalition of people that you can trust. So you have these relationships where there's built trust. And so then I'm hoping that has taken place. And then after that has taken place, if there is an occurrence where you feel that you are burned out, there should be corporate wellness programs within your organization. There should be employee health services that you can reach out to and ask for the resources that are available. I know some organizations, especially during this pandemic, are providing free yoga services to their employees to try to just help people, be well from head to toe. I know some organizations are providing free gym memberships where people are getting an opportunity to maybe go to a group dance class or something like that. So I would say that you want to be careful, and it really just depends on how competitive an environment it is. So going to HR as an academic would be very different than going to HR if I was still a consultant, because consulting has a different level of competition and competitiveness in my experience than in academia. And of course, it depends on what school. Is it a private school? Is it a public school? So you want to kind of make sure that you look at the environment, kind of get a feel on, their take on it, because some organizations are very aware and concerned about the whole health of their employees, but then you might have worked somewhere where that may not be the case. And then looking at an external source like NAMI might be a place to go. So you want to be careful. Everything involves a level of discernment there, just to be honest.
Well, thank you guys so much for continuing while I dealt with my minor emergency. And it actually looks like you addressed one of the things that I wanted to ask you, which is how businesses are dealing with burnout, again, especially in the pandemic. So let's backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit more about the pandemic, how it's affecting people, how it's affecting businesses. What is different about burnout now versus several months ago when things were normal?
Right. You know what? One of the biggest things, Jessica, I know for me, I didn't even know what Zoom was really until March. And so I had never really gotten on Zoom. I've taught online, but I use Blackboard, but now my days are filled with Zoom. So I feel that I know people are burned out on Zoom meetings, and their whole life is being, basically kind of defined by that. I was going to share this statistic too from CNBC that says over 2/3 or 69% of employees are experiencing burnout symptoms while working from home. The survey found that is up from almost 20% from a similar survey in early May. And so basically people felt that, oh, I'm going to be working from home. I'm not going to have to travel. I'm not going to have to pay for dry cleaners. But then those things you may not have to deal with, but there's other things that have come up, like there is no hard breaks in dealing with childcare. And I've also talked to people and also read things about, unfortunately, how domestic violence is up in certain circumstances, because a lot of students and children go to school for a respite maybe from their home life. So there's just so much going on right now that how is it different during the pandemic? It's different because, number one, you can be burned out from being at home. And I know I never thought that. And you could be, people are burned out from having that constant interpersonal touch and not ever really having time alone to decompress. Some people are in that circumstance. Depending on whether their home is big enough, people can get their space and all those types of things.
Okay. I definitely get that. We have another question from Wendy. She asked, how can companies do more to support their employees' mental wellness? And I'm gonna chime in on that a little bit too.
Okay. I would say that one of the first things is recognize that we're human, this is a human condition that we're dealing. And when I say condition, I'm talking about the pandemic. We're all in this together. We are all dealing with the social injustice, and many of us are dealing with the economic challenges that have hit hard because of the pandemic. And so recognize that and be honest about it. And if you hear the leadership really sets the tone. And if the leadership and if your manager allows you to speak from the heart about what you're dealing with, one of the things that we talk about in human resources are reasonable accommodations. Maybe you should provide some reasonable accommodations for moms and dads that have younger children that are at home. Maybe that important meeting shouldn't be right when the kids are getting out of school. Maybe that important meeting should be at a time that's more palatable for everyone that's involved. So I think one of the biggest things that companies can do is speak about it. They can recognize that it's the case and listen. So some organizations really just kind of put out statements to tell people things, but we should have a conversation where there's active listening involved, where we're really trying to hear from one another and work together. I mean, it's really an unprecedented time. So we have to do things differently than the way that we've always done them.
Absolutely agree. And specifically for mental health and mental wellness, this is something that I wish more companies were addressing long term. It's especially important now because of the increased pressure, because of the increased chances of burnout and other mental illnesses. But long term, companies can do a little bit more to support overall mental health and mental wellness. Like you said, reasonable accommodations, the same need to be made for your mental health. The same way that companies have insurance plans and backup plans for medical situations, they need to have those for mental health situations as well. And those accommodations need to go across the board. A lot of employee assistance programs have lines that you can call on a regular basis to get mental health assistance, just in the same way that you would call to look for a doctor. And we have a lot of organizations, a lot of programs have physical emergency response plans. Again, you need the same emergency response plans, the same preventative structure when it comes to mental health to keep an overall healthy and well environment. I love what you said about listening and having a conversation instead of it being a one-way dialogue where people are instructing you about things. I think that's really critical when it comes to management, taking the steps to make sure they have a mentally healthy environment. If anybody has any questions about that, if anybody is in a management position and they want to do something to help increase the mental wellness of their company or organization, please feel free to give us a call. You can reach us through our website. Give us a call with any questions, comments, concerns, or if you'd like to work out a partnership with some type of program. So we've talked about what it looks like. We've talked about how it can affect us. How can we prevent it? How can we stop it before we get to that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, one thing that I know for myself is that you have to have also people in your life that you've given permission to be honest with you. So if I'm a person that, I have a patterned way of how I behave, and I'm starting to act out of sorts, I'm hopeful that I've developed some relationships where they can let me know that, hey, Aneika, you kind of seem a little bit more short-tempered or not as engaged or what have you. So hopefully those relationships, I mean, the way to really deal with burnout is to focus and make sure you know what your priorities are. Make sure you know what your values are and what your convictions are, and then focus on those things. And I know for me, I've cut the fat. So anything that is not really hanging on the things that are really important to me in my life, I really don't try to engage with. And also I've given myself the freedom to engage in the power of no, to where if people ask me to do things that are not really part of my core value, that I can say no to that. So, being a part of this is something that's important to me. Like I said, I've been burned out, and I know people who've had some challenges with mental illness. So I think these conversations are really, really important. In fact, I think you guys sent out a message recently that says that one conversation can change a life. And so I think that, having these conversations, and I think we talked about stigma before, we've got to destigmatize this. I mean, just like if I hurt my foot and I went to a foot doctor, there's nothing wrong with that. And if I'm dealing with some mental challenges, there is nothing wrong with seeking help for that at all. I mean, our whole body is together. It all functions together. And so if I hurt my finger, it will hurt me. I will feel it. And so we need to make sure that we are connected with people, that we are focused, that we're doing physical things. So I know for me, one of the ways that I try to prevent burnout is I go for walks. I go for walks almost every day. And when I was writing my dissertation, that's something that I started implementing in my life. It doesn't cost any money. You don't have to go buy outfits. You don't have to look cute to do it. So if I'm feeling stressed out, I will unplug, put all the technology down and go walk around the neighborhood, preferably by some water. Those things just naturally, calm you down. There's so many things that we can do that don't cost money to help prevent burnout. And like I said, journaling is one also. I've kept a journal for over 20 years. Hopefully no one will ever find it, but I've kept a journal for 20 years, and I just write down my thoughts and my feelings. And I found that to be cathartic for me as well. And again, having someone that listens to me, that I can trust. And I hope that everyone on this call can identify, one or two people. It doesn't take a whole bunch, but one or two real friends or people that you can talk to. I think those things, they seem small, but I think they can go a long way in preventing burnout.
I agree. And the same goes for mental health. Like you said, we do say that one conversation can save a life. It's speaking up your own truth, about your own truth, and also speaking up for others. If you, like you said, I would also like to hope that you and I have done it in conversation, like, hey, this is all right,
Yeah.
So I would also like to hope that, and that one question could make a difference in someone's life. September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very important that we continue to look out for each other, because there are people going through much, much more than they seem. I read somewhere in one of the memes, it's like, if you're going through a depression, I don't care if it sounds like you're whining all the time. I don't care. I'd rather you speak up and complain about it every day than take your life. So please, 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 if you are feeling any type of suicidal thoughts, please speak up to someone. There's always someone to get help. NAMI is definitely here as a resource. You can message us through Facebook 24/7. I keep my phone on me. You can call us Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. There's actually a live person there to speak to you, to listen to what you have going on, and to offer you the proper resources. And there's also crisis information that is listed on our website. So if you or someone that you know is in a state of crisis, please, please, please call someone right away. So
absolutely. And I'll just say, as again, this isn't, I'm coming from the business perspective, and as a mom and as a wife, like I said, I've been married 17 years, and we've had ebbs and flows and how much stress and burnout we were dealing with. But when I see it in friends, I'm careful not to diagnose people. All I do is identify observations so that I can engage in a kind and respectful conversation. And that, again, that seems small, but I think some people struggle with how to talk to others. And right. So it's just really important that, we're kind and respectful. We don't diagnose, but we just say, hey, maybe I'm seeing some patterns here. Is everything okay? And how can I help you? Not make people feel judged in any kind of way.
Exactly. And that's one thing NAMI also likes to try to offer, is just a warm space. We have free support groups all over the city for people who are living with mental illness, and also those who are caring for someone or who are loved ones of someone that's living with mental illness. And all of our support groups and educational classes are taught by trained peers, meaning they go through a certification process to make sure what they're saying is legitimate. And also they are people who are going through what you've been through. And again, we have what we call a warm line, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, which means that there's an active, warm-bodied person to talk to you, not an automated machine, that you can call Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That number is 713-970-4483. So call, talk to someone with lived experience, to vent, to get help, to talk through what you're going through. In addition, we have resources on our website. So if you're not sure what you're looking for, there's a list of people, resources that you can go to. If it's drugs, if it's alcohol, if you need housing, we would prefer to talk to you, but there are also those resources on the website as well. And that website is www.NAMI, that's NAMI, GreaterHouston.org. So we've talked about prevention. We've talked about reaching out to others when they are in burnout, but we've gone through all of that. We're in it. we're aware of it. How do we recover? How do you come back from that place?
Yeah. How do we recover? So that means you want to come back to a balanced state. And I know for me that one of the things that I work really hard to do with my husband is to live a balanced life. So how do we recover? A lot of times we feel stress and anxiety when things are out of balance. We're doing more work than what our body can really take. Our minds are ruminating and not really ever able to quiet and to be still. So I know for me, when I've recovered from burnout, I try to come back to a balanced state. And again, really prioritize, really focus in on my family. Families and close friends are really important. But the first thing I would have to do is recognize that I was actually burned out, because some people feel that we're talking about that stigmatization again, that, they don't want to admit that they were burned out. Well, it's okay. It happens to the best of us. We're all in this together. So I would need to recognize that I was burned out and develop a plan. And I have to tell you, I'm a praying woman and I will pray. But at the same time, my husband and I have gone to counseling together. So if I felt that I was burned out or we were taking some hits and we needed some professional help, I would pray and go see a therapist, pray and go see a counselor, and have no shame about that. So I would put a plan to get together. And that plan, like I said, may include to recover, to balance, or reprioritize, do that walking, do that journaling, go back to that membership that we've been paying for anyway, but haven't been going to the gym. Go to that gym, join a class, and read. So like, I was just going to show you guys one of the books I love that's helped my life a lot is 9 Things That You Simply Must Do by Dr. Henry Cloud. And, another one that I did when I was younger is How People Grow. And I just try to, allow myself to be human. So I address the points in my life. Like I said, I'm a recovering type A, a recovery perfectionist. I had to acknowledge that. I mean, I was a person who felt guilty when I took naps. I don't feel guilty when I take naps anymore, but I used to. I used to feel guilty if I wasn't using every waking moment, like, crunching and getting it in. And so I had to have a change, talk to myself, talk to my friends, and make some modifications. Another thing when you recover from burnout, to me, is you can't let the criticisms of other people stick on you. So if people are criticizing you because you did something or you said something during burnout, you want to be able to hear what people are saying, but that criticism, you got to let it, you got to let it wash right over you, right? And maybe not everyone may have critics, but I think a lot of people do, and we have to be able to put them in their proper perspective. But we want to make sure that we're focusing on our health, we're focusing on not being distracted, and we're focusing on putting down those barriers and bringing in those people that care about you so you can be your best self, for yourself first, and then for the people that you love. I mean, I always tell my children, like when I take a break or when my husband and I go to have dinner, if I don't take good care of myself, I can't take good care of you. Mommy needs to get rest. Mommy needs to live, have a well-balanced meal. I need to be a whole person. And then I can give my best to you.
You're absolutely right. I told my children the same thing. Like, I can't give to you if I'm empty.
That's right.
So you have to take a moment to take care of yourself so that you can pour into others. And you said a whole word when you talked about, going to counseling and having faith. That's something that we've been talking about often here. July was Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And as religion is very much a staple in especially African American communities, a lot of times instead of using it as a healing tool, it's used as a preventative measure for people getting help, or an added layer of stigma. When they can coexist, you can have faith and still go get help, right? If you have faith in God as a healer, I bet if you had cancer, you would still go see the oncologist. So the same goes for your mental health and your mental well-being. Mental health is health.
Yes.
And it's going to it's going to stay that way. It's not going to change. And the quicker we all understand that is, I think the quicker we'll all be a mentally healthier society and people. And definitely, like you said, plan. Know yourself, know your weaknesses, know your triggers. Know what helps you, right? What helps you to come out of those dark places. Know what to avoid. Know who to avoid. Like you said, even if it's not someone judging you, it's going to be something, right? We all have family or friends that we know are going to trigger that insecurity in us, or that anger in us, or whatever it is that we are not wanting to feel, or is not best for us to feel, that will contribute to our burnout, that will contribute to our depression, that will contribute to some of the things that we're living through.
And I agree with that, Jessica. And I think we have to get to a mature place to recognize those triggers. And it's not to hurt someone else, that maybe every time you're with them, you leave them feeling worse, or every time you go this different place, you leave there feeling worse. And I'm in tune to myself. There are places that I can go, and I know that I'm just going to feel better being there. And there's places and there are people that I talk to that every time I get off the phone with them, I'm going to have a smile on my face. And that's okay. You know, we have to be able to recognize who we are, you know, and give ourselves the opportunity to be our best selves by surrounding ourselves by people, places and things that, you know, bring health and wellness to our minds, our emotions, our bodies, everything, for sure.
Okay. So we do have a couple more questions. Let me scroll back up. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but do some companies stand out as offering innovative extra support to individuals when they may experience their moment of burnout, since it can creep up on us at any time? Mm-hmm. So I personally don't know any companies that offer accommodations specifically for burnout, but there are many professional organizations out there, especially the larger companies. We've had the pleasure of speaking with Shell. We've had the pleasure of speaking with Exxon. I know Insperity is another large company that tries to be mentally healthy. So there are definitely a lot of companies that attempt to have mentally healthy environments that do make accommodations for mental illnesses. This was my first time learning that burnout was an official diagnosis. So it will be interesting to see how in the coming years that's incorporated into corporate environments, that realization and that understanding and that sensitivity to burnout. So I wish I had an answer for you there, but I think that's kind of a per company question, but there's definitely some companies out there that make accommodations. And similarly, we have another question. Is professional burnout more related to the amount of work on someone's plate or the amount of support someone has? And how does the research support that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. So when you talk about burnout, I gave you guys the kind of summary definition, but let me give you the larger one. So burnout is a psychological syndrome emerging as a prolonged response to chronic interpersonal stressors on the job. So stressors are things that make me feel stress. Stress is what I feel. And remember, there's two types, distress and eustress. And so is it that the workload? Well, if it's something you love, it may not be the workload. And if you have the support, maybe it's not that. It is a lot of times it's a balance between the two in terms of the research. So if I'm having a lot of work to do, but I have the physical resources, I have the emotional resources, I have the support and the people that I work with, then maybe that's not necessarily a source of stress for me. However, in that exact same situation, if I'm dealing with conflict, interpersonal conflict, then that actually might be stressful to me. So it really just depends on the situation. I always tell my students, there's you and who you are, and then how you interact with the context in where you work, that leads to an outcome that could be positive or negative. So it really just depends on whether you have the resources, who you are, and how you respond to it. Because Jessica and I might be put in the exact same situation, but depending on who we are, she may see it as you stress, the good stress, and I might see it as distress, the bad stress. And so it just depends. But really, burnout is a prolonged, chronic type thing. And there's a graphic that I show my students. It's kind of like constant pressure, and you feel kind of insecure. You then start having a lack of meaning at work, a lack of control, and you have these unfulfilled expectations that then lead to stress and exhaustion that we talked about. And really, a big precursor is helplessness, that no matter how much I do, it's never enough. And no matter how much I get done, I'll never get praised for it. It's just this sense that I am stuck here and there's just nothing that can be done about it.
Awesome. So you just talked a little bit about the different types of stress. Are there similarly different types of burnout?
Good question. I would say that we just got it in the World Health Organization last year. So it's kind of like at a high level right now, but sure. I mean, there's work-related burnout. There's burnout related to family issues. There's burnout related to illness. If people deal with a physical illness for a very long time, a mental illness for a very long time, it's just basically any aspect of life that is chronic and you feel a sense of helplessness. And then remember those three components that we talked about.
Awesome. Okay, does anybody else have any questions either on Facebook or on Zoom? We are happy to answer. This has definitely been one of my favorite conversations. And I think it's so well timed, again, with Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, with the pandemic, with the start of school. I am loving this conversation. Our audience seems to be enjoying it as well. We've had lots of pleasant comments in the sections. Do you have any more questions?
I was just going to say that, you know, burnout is costly. So it's something we want to recognize and address. You know, individually, you could be the most talented person, but if you have burnout and we're not dealing with it, there could be loss of productivity. You know, sometimes people start dealing with high blood pressure. You know, sometimes people have sleepless nights, all of these types of things. And, you know, we just don't want that. So we want to try to address things if and while we can. And then there's corporate cost as well. I was going to share with you guys that the Harvard Business School found that workplace stress contributes to up to 8% of the national spending on healthcare. In 2015, that was almost $200 billion. So stress is costly. Stress is costly. And again, it can lead to burnout and these other outcomes that we want to try to keep down as much as possible.
Wow. Okay. We did have a comment in Zoom. It says that Harris County offers wellness webinars as well as an employee assistance program if you're experiencing stress and burnout. So that is definitely a resource that I wasn't aware of. So please, if you're experiencing those things, look into that and get help sooner than later. Another thing that we often talk about at NAMI is in regards to mental health is health. Stage 4 is also too late when you're dealing with mental health, right? When you get to stage 4 with cancer, you have everybody's attention, or you're trying to prevent it from getting to stage 4. It's at stage 2, oh good, we caught it early. Early detection is so important when it comes to mental health, because stage 4 is also, it's hard to treat, right? Stage 4, you're critical. And we want to help. We want to be there for each other. We want to be there for the community. So NAMI is definitely here. You're not in this alone. So if you have no one else to turn to in the entire world, at least know that you can call NAMI, if nothing else. But I'm sure that there's one person in your life that you can reach out to. And we are happy to help you navigate through those rough waters to get you back on track.
Now, I will say I did have a question, because my sister-in-law works for Legacy, Roma Bod Coleman. And so I wanted to know for the listeners, like, what is the difference between, because I know you guys, this is not a competitive environment where you work, right? So you guys are okay with helping one another, where with Capgemini and Accenture, it's like, no, don't share. But with you all, it's not like that. So what is the difference between the two and how you all work together or kind of integrate?
The two agencies?
Yes.
Okay, so there are actually several different agencies at play. There's Harris County itself, which I think their official is Harris County Health Systems. And then there is the Harris Center, which used to be MHMRA. And then there is organizations like NAMI, the ARC, which is an IDD organization, Mental Health America, and other organizations that are not necessarily a part of Harris County or the Harris Center, but we partnership in various ways to bring these services. So we're just kind of like a support system to those, pre-existing programs and services. Okay. Also, NAMI does not offer direct support, meaning we don't offer direct services, like therapy itself. So we have a person that you can call and talk to that'll send you to a good therapist, or we can send you to an organization that will do the hands-on work. But NAMI does not provide direct services in that way. We are a resource. We are a support system. We're a warm hug. The people who just want to hug you. So get you to the therapy that you'll need to make it. So that's kind of the difference between what NAMI does and what some of the other county systems do. But we definitely work very well with those systems and other companies in the city of Houston. Like you said, we want to share the load because mental health is such a huge issue. We can't carry it by ourselves. No one organization can. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely all about partnerships, collaboration, anything because our warm line is actually came from a grant from the Be Good Foundation and Jack Dorsey. So that was something that was granted to us early in the pandemic to reach communities of color that were most impacted. That was something we realized early on, right? Like COVID was impacting certain zip codes, certain areas, certain people more than others. And so that grant came about to help really get into those communities. Because just like you said, as you have those external factors, you have your job, you have your family, you have so many other things. And when those situations become more stressful, it leads to other mental health issues. So we definitely knew that, hey, there's a red flag going up. And I've even heard my executive director refer to the second wave of COVID, not as the disease itself, but as the mental health fallout. There are going to be so many people living through trauma, just of this entire situation, people being isolated and quarantined, loss of jobs, loss of family members and loved ones. So there's a lot. You have people who graduated high school who didn't get to walk the stage. You have children like ours who are starting a new journey in a way that's unexpected. So a lot of these things seem small now, but over time and without support, it can grow to be very, very heavy issues. I think we do have one more question. I'm sorry, y'all let me ramble on. Nobody stopped me. What advice do you have specifically for peer-led, family-led grassroots programs like ours? Our frontline leaders are so compelled because they have lived experience, but at the same time, they're juggling a lot in their personal lives as they continue, as they contribute outward. So that's definitely something I would love to hear your opinion on. We even had someone in the comments mention specifically with volunteer work, because again, all of our programs are led by people who are experiencing, right? So you have someone living with mental illness who wants to help other people who are living with mental illness, but they're still also living with their mental illness. So what advice do you have for organizations like ours who are with people who are trying to balance themselves with helping others?
Yes, actually, it's interesting that that's the last question, because I actually was just thinking about that we hadn't really talked about caretakers very much, because even if I'm not dealing with those things, but I am caring for someone who has a mental illness or who has a challenge, then as a caretaker, I could be burned out. One of the biggest things, because honestly, Jessica, before you and I really started talking, I didn't know that what NAMI was. So one of the biggest things that we can do is get the word out, which is part of the reasons why I wanted to participate in this. And for me, especially as an African-American woman, it's destigmatizing this whole thing and letting people know that these resources are available and that, they're here for you. In terms of if I was dealing with that situation before I got on this call, how you talked about students are being isolated and quarantined. They're starting these pod groups I would try to get involved in a pod group. If I was working in something like this, and I was, and I also was a caretaker and I had my own thing going on, I would try to get with some people who could understand, people I trust, that psychological safety that we talked about. Not people that try to use things against you and say weird things, but people that I trust to try to get in that pod so that I could be understood as well as supported. So that's what I would try to do.
That's a great point. Just like you have therapists who have therapists. It's similar. I guess it would be a similar thing with our volunteers. And we are so grateful for our volunteers because our program is primarily led by volunteer program facilitators. Our executive director knows the exact number off the top of his head. It's something like 285, but it's a number we're very proud of. We're very proud of our group. And we do try to take, their own mental health and anxiety and burnout into consideration, as they are moving forward in our programs. So we want the help, but we also want them to be mentally healthy.
And I was just going to say real quick that the research says that people that are in high touch jobs are most likely to experience burnout. So like teachers, physicians, police officers, firemen, nurses. These are the people that it's that high human touch, even if it's through Zoom. They're the ones that are more likely to deal with burnout, unfortunately.
Awesome. Aneika, this has been wonderful. I can't believe it's been an hour. It feels like, just sitting and chatting with a friend, I guess because you are my friend. So I'm so excited to have had this conversation. For those of you who may have missed a portion, it will be on our social media page, and it will also be on our website, www.namigreaterhouston.org. So it should be up as of tomorrow. And again, our one-line number is 713-970-4483. We are here if you want to talk. And again, just please, please, please remember that you are not alone. Reach out to help. And if you see someone that needs help, reach out to help. So thank you so much, Dr. Simmons.
Thank you.
I'm so appreciative. And we will see you all next week, Tuesday, same time, same place for our Tuesday Talks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, everyone.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.